There's a lot of aspects in my life that I'd like to talk to people about. And since I'm limited on the number of people I have to listen to how my life is faring and my ability to come up with everything I want to talk about in a vanilla conversation, you'll have to do, viewer. With that out of the way, I'm going to be starting a yearly tradition of going over how the year has been for me. Let's start with the bad by saying, it's been one hell of a year, with emphasis on the hell. Aside from my high school years, I don't think I've ever dealt with a worse long period of time like this ever. While I myself never contracted 2020's most prominent ailment, several of my family members had. This led to some quarantining and worst of all, me having to restrain my addiction to petting cats. You have no idea how difficult that was for me. On top of that, the pandemic also stopped me from being able to work as a pet/house sitter and an office assistant since no one would leave their houses. It even shut away my plans for MomoCon, which really sucked since I sacrificed my opportunity to go to Comic-Con so I could afford the trip to Atlanta, and I haven't gotten to go to a convention the entirety of the year. While 2020 had its massive share of catastrophic events, thankfully, this is the only one that interfered with me. Unfortunately, the side effects took a strong mental toll on me that I really could have gone without, mainly making it even harder than usual to find a job. I actually did manage to have a temporary position in the credentialing department of a medical license company. Did I enjoy it? Well, it wasn't the worst experience I had in the employment of a company before. I had no idea what I was doing more than half the time, and I had an incredibly hard time learning even the basics. On top of that, they terminated me with no reason as to why 2 weeks in, as I was finally starting to learn how to do the job. Though I can't complain too much since it was temporary and all. Since then, I haven't been able to secure a single job of any kind. Here I am with a master's degree, unable to get an entry-level position since I look overqualified, and also unable to get a respectable job due to not having enough experience. Let me tell you, after you jump through numerous hoops to complete a job application and never receive a response, you get to the point of being happy just to hear you've been rejected. And it gets very discouraging to try again. But even within the awful times, there are still good moments that I will treasure forever, hidden within that mountain of garbage that was this year. Namely, one of the biggest highlights was when I showed up in 2 of Chugga Conroy's videos.
Okay. This is
anyway.
I've Street Pass Scene and Proton John. This crazy thing. Well, Scene has done it once again. Proton John has done it. And that's it. Yes, I know it's pronounced Sean. I like saying it that way because it's funny. You don't beat Proton John at video games. 11? Okay, so I beat Sean. He's frowning at me! Oh, it feels so satisfying. It's like a computerized avatar of him as emoting for. I also found out that Sean is a viewer, and I didn't know that. Maybe I had this 3DS on me at a convention or something?
It's a minor event in the long run. But that feeling when your senpai acknowledges your existence, there's nothing else quite like it. For an actual constructive good thing, the inability to go out managed to bring out some more of my creative side. I wrote the first 4 chapters to an adventure fantasy novel series I've had in the works for some time now, and most of the 5th chapter is done too. I hope someday I can publish my works and they'll become the next Star Wars or Harry Potter. I've also been busy with the nostalgic activity of building LEGO sets during pandemic downtime. I forgot how much fun it was, and my parents even provided me with several large sets that I managed to put together easily within a few short hours. Despite the panic in the air, it hasn't stopped me from traveling around. I visited my friend Cameron at his new house, made a ride to my grandma's, and made several drives between my new home and my parents' house, taking me probably well over 2,000 miles worth of driving this year. Was it worth it? Totally! Aside from having a fun time at Cam's Halloween party and just enjoying time with my friends and family, I got to experience something truly envious among my mutuals. I got to eat at Fazoli's 4 times. That's right. The mythical fast Italian food chain that for some ungodly reason is exceedingly rare, I had the privilege to dine from 4 times this year. There are only 2 of them in the state of Florida. And it is also my favorite fast food, so it goes without saying that I treasure the experience. With the main good and the bad of the year now addressed, there isn't much more I can share since I didn't get to go out and do a whole lot. But there are still plenty of points worth mentioning, such as the fact I've moved out of my parents' house. Moving in with my sister and brother-in-law may not have yielded helpful results for my employment status yet, but the new experience sure beats what I've been having to go through, wallowing in hopelessness as the pandemic makes progression through life slow to a halt. When it comes to what I've accomplished in the world of gaming this year, there are several things worth bringing up. For new milestones, I've made my first ever level 9,999 character in Disgaea, started my first ever Final Fantasy game, completed virtually all mainline quests in Skyrim, and even managed to beat Breath of the Wild's Trial of the Sword. I would have done it during my last playthrough, but I was playing in Master Mode then, and that makes completing even the beginning trials damn near impossible. In the realms of LPing and content, I finished a short LP of Katamari Damacy Reroll and started Disgaea 2, and while there were no main projects on the group channel this year, we have completed uploading the longest running game on the channel. Speaking of that game, it shall not be named so as to avoid inciting trauma on, well, me. And finally, that brings me to what my hopes are for next year. While I could talk about all the things that sucked about this year for everyone and how next year will hopefully rid us all of those problems, I would like to focus on things that are actually within my power to change. For example, I want to be at least a little more physically active and in shape. So on top of me already changing my diet significantly, I'm going to cut back on pigging out a little more, and I'm going to start doing light exercises most mornings from now on. I've already begun this, and even now I'm beginning to feel more energized throughout the day. Another thing I want to have done is having an active career that I can rely on for both making income and building my network and reputation. So far, I've had no jobs I can really boast about or use as a reference, and finally having a point I can utilize for such a mean will take a load off my burdens. I've also looked into how I can utilize my talents for voice work, and I think I have a lead I can go off of. But that is slightly lower on my priority list, since it's unlikely much will come of it early on. This searching will more than likely get in the way of my YouTube content, but I also enjoy making media, so I don't plan on stopping production until my body is no longer physically able to do so. Finally, while it seems less important than other things I've mentioned up until now, one of my biggest hopes for next year is to finally make some progress in finding a significant other. I don't want to aim for anything serious or even official, but having some cute girl around somewhat regularly to help me feel less lonely would be fine enough. I don't even desire an active relationship or sexual activity. Me simply feeling less lonely would mean more time being productive and less time having to lock myself up in horny jail. I would like something more serious in the future, but I'd be more probable to find success if I start by setting my sights lower. All of that said and done, that's all I have to share. I'll see you all with more content in the new year. Goodbye, 2020, and good riddance.